great deal of tension is has developed between John Allen and Edgar, and John would like him to go on to the University of Virginia, and Edgar really doesn't have a reason why he should, but he does, and he drops out within a year. Probably one of the most famous short-lived UVA alum or members or what have you, students that they ever had. But what he did is he became really good friends with a number of some of the great American literers of the time. And one of them being Walt Whitman. And a lot of it revolved around the notion that there needed to be a new movement, something that exemplified Americana, and something that would draw people in for passion and love. Because don't forget, this generation just experienced one of the most dreadful things any particular institution, any particular country could go through, which was a civil war. So, you know, this romanticism concept. Now, his romanticism concept is a dark romanticism concept. Walt Whitman's was a little bit more romantic, a little bit more sensual, a little bit more leaves and grass. But what he was able to do with this is he was able to meet a whole entire wonderful group of people, and use it to his advantage. One of them being, and of course I lost it. So that's the thing about technology. You press something too fast, and it just disappears. Okay, Ian. Oh, I'm sorry. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And there's a lot of controversies between these individuals. A lot of them didn't really get along, but they did. They did it socially, but they were very aggressive with each other. You know, who's better at making America better? And I don't even think that was their intent. I mean, we kind of look at them, hindsight, with that idea. But what was interesting about Edgar Allen is that most of his works were printed during his lifetime. Saturday Evening Post would run, an extra every week. The Baltimore Sun back then had a literary page and would run 2 or 3 paragraphs. So you'd wait the next day to find out what was going on. Kind of a serial. And I'm not going to say it was probably a first concept of serial publishing, but it was pretty darn close to it. So the other thing is that, you know, of course he'd met several women. First of all, his wife, who was his first cousin, his Aunt Maria's daughter, Virginia, who I believe were 13 years old when he married, and I believe he was about 26. In our standard, that's a little young, but I don't know. I like 26-year-olds. And she was constantly sick and troubled, and this drew him even further into a really interesting place. I mean, she was his muse. She was able to get him to write all of these really extensive, frightening poems. And so what also occurred is that he had gotten himself kind of caught up in a situation with two other women. And it was not, I mean, it was more of an amorous relationship that he had with these two other women. One of them being married. So, Baltimore started seeing him as a philanderer. And he wasn't really philandering. He was just kind of a pretty happy guy with these other two babes. Because his wife was miserable. But, anyways, so he leaves the University of Virginia, and he says, well, you know what, maybe I should join the military. So he enlists in the United States Army, and he uses the name Edgar Allen Poe, who was one of his famous, one of the most famous admirals at the time was, of course, right. And he served at Fort Independence in Boston Harbor, and it was $5 a month, so it was some money. By the way, $5 a month is a lot of dough. Not today, but then. And he began to write some very interesting poems about the shore. Not the romantic, scary poems that he was writing. We know him as a writer, but these wonderful, blue seas and now, of course, he talked about monsters coming out of the blue seas and some other wild things, but it was a little different. It was a little different. He got himself court-martialed and removed from the army, and so his army career was very short-lived. He had said that he was 22, but he was only 18. And so he goes and he stays with Walt Whitman in South Carolina, where he then meets Sarah Whitman, Walt Whitman's niece. And Sarah is a native of Providence and lived in what was called the Red House. And so he goes up and he visits Sarah Whitman and courts her. And the Red House is a very famous house in the city of Providence. It's still there. And the courting couch, which is a circular couch, is still in the courting room. You could go there if you want to. And he would essentially chase her around the couch. But the mother really despised him. Said, oh, he's going to amount to nothing. But what's interesting about his tenure in Providence is that he was asked by the Athenaeums to come and speak and read his stuff. And he did that. And he spoke at the Providence Athenaeum and the Boston Athenaeum and at Redwood and also at some of the Unitarian Universalist churches that would allow him in to talk about his scary, where he gets the ideas from. So this is a very interesting thing. Anyways, that courtship kind of ends, probably not at the dismay of Sarah Whitman. So his publishing career. There were a lot of American publishing houses at the time, like Gossett, who would not publish. They considered it inappropriate because it was so dark. So he went to London and said, "Would you be willing to publish my writings?" And because of the copyright laws, international copyright laws, they said yes. But what ended up happening is that they ended up taking the entire profit of his writings because there was no, there was no copyright, international copyright. So if he had published in the U.S., maybe it would have turned out a little different for him. So anyways, the Baltimore Sun, like I said, put the serial together for him. It was a cousin of Whitman, who at the time owned the Baltimore Sun, so that's how he was able to get that deal going. And so anyways, he moves along and he gets into a plagiarism argument with Longfellow. And of course their relationship ends, and his entree to Boston society ends with that relationship, and his drug and alcohol abuse just multiplies. And he tries to rekindle his relationship with Sarah Whitman. And she was a very interesting woman. I mean, she was a spiritualist and a transcendentalist, and she herself was a poet and a literary critic. But she had she came from a very powerful family, and he thought, well, maybe I can use her as an entree into Providence Society, and it really didn't work out for him. I'm going to leave you at that, so we can bring up Peter, and I'll be back.